Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from emergebydesign.net, and welcome to my weekly transit report starting on Monday, November 18th through Sunday, November 24th. Now, before I jump into each chart of the day, I did sort of want to set the stage, if you will, for where we are in this particular lunar cycle. It's been a big one. It started with a new moon in Scorpio in gate 44 on November 1st. So we knew at the beginning it was in a fixed water sign. It was going to have the tendency to be an emotional lunar cycle. About finding things in the shadows, possibly, things maybe coming up, the depths of truth that were hidden before may have been illuminated. So in that sense, it was very stimulating. The co-rulers of the sign of Scorpio, Mars and Pluto, at the time of the new moon were in a direct opposition to each other. So we could really get a sense that there might be a power struggle with hidden truths. Of course, we had the US elections, and it's been a very confrontational, noisy period. And I think the new moon sort of brought that to the table, that we could have a very challenging month, if you will. Yet there's some real deep supportive aspects I want to highlight this week as we continue our journey. But we had the new moon on November 1st. And then 2 weeks later, on November 15th, we had a full moon in Taurus in gate 23, line 6. An individual gate. And as you'll see this week, there is a lot of individual frequency going on. So in spite of the fact that this month may have some degree of overwhelm at times, there's just so much change, transition, confrontation on a global scale. What I'm seeing in the charts due to this significant amount of individual gates is that we are being stimulated or triggered at a deeply individual level. So my encouragement this week is, in spite of all that noise, what does that mean to you and your personal inspiration? And I think that that's where we're putting our attention, and also, of course, following our personal authority, which we learned from our human design body graph, and having a deep physical embodied connection with our personal authority. These are deeply transformational times. Pluto has been in the headlines, as I've been discussing for a number of weeks now. You'll see this week in the charts, Pluto will finally move out of a Capricorn into the sign of Aquarius. We won't see Pluto in Capricorn for any of our lifetimes. It'll be almost over 200 years till he's back in Capricorn, and we're moving into Aquarius, where he'll be for the next 20 years. So part of this stimulating frequency is speaking to us in a way that's asking the question, what are structures, Capricornian structures, individual structures that we may have built up for ourselves that are limiting us? Pluto in the gate of limitation, gate 60. How are these limitations holding us back? And as we learned from that gate 60, the tagline in the Rei I Ching is, acceptance is the first step in transcendence. And I think that's part of the message as Pluto is transitioning into Aquarius, is that things are the way they are. But they are that, but what does that mean to me individually? Not getting caught up in that noise, into the blame, shame, confrontation, argumentative atmosphere that we're in right now, to go inward and ask questions of myself. How can I use these stimulating times to find my sense of truth and inspiration at a deeper level? And what would my voice of contribution be? And I think as I show you the charts, I'll be able to indicate why the chart is offering this pathway, if you will. The pathway of least resistance right now is cleaning out our back closet of our soul. You know, whatever we've swept under the rug, this is a really supportive time to air that, to look at it, to accept it, look at where it's come from. Why are we having a particular fear, doubt, and insecurity? And to trace those roots down to where they've come from and how we can heal from that. We've had Jupiter in a sextile to Chiron, the wounded healer, for several weeks now. And so again, very supportive energy for personal, individual healing in aim of personal inspiration and truth. So that's sort of the background dynamics of the emotional lunar cycle. You'll see that we have the third quarter moon on this Friday. And so the third quarter moon this week is a wonderful time to reflect on what we've learned so far during this lunar cycle. What truths have come to the surface? What do we see now that we didn't see before? And how can we take agency during the third quarter moon to nourish and support ourselves based on what this learning process has brought us? I always think of it like tending the garden of our soul right now. And again, the message is letting go of things that are no longer serving us. And so we'll say some more about that, but a very powerful third quarter moon coming up on Friday. And then the last thing I want to mention before I get into the charts, you'll see that when we start out on Monday, we have the sun in gate 14, line 3, which puts the earth in its polarity in gate 8. That'll be through Thursday. And then on Friday, near the third quarter moon, the sun will move into Sagittarius into gate 34, and that'll put the earth in opposition in gate 20. I'm mentioning that because the sun and earth, which is the main frequency, 70% of our neutrinos come from the sun, so it's always the main frame of the time period we're in. And so for this whole calendar week, we have the sun and earth, all 4 of them are in individual gates. So very stimulating at this inner core level. And I think if that's where our attention and reflection regarding the third quarter moon, following our personal authority, there's real support of answers coming up from the dark, right? This plutonic phase we've been going through in this transition out of Capricorn to move into a new level. So let's take a look at this and we'll break it down day by day. Here is the chart for Monday, November 18th. And all of my charts, you'll see the body graph on the left, the astrological wheel on the right. They're all run for noon Mountain Time each day, except for when I get to the lunation of the third quarter moon. And I'll mention that again when we get to it. As I mentioned, we have the sun in gate 14, the earth in gate 18. Now, there is some very dynamic energy going on as we look at the astrological wheel for Monday. What I want to point out here, we have Mercury traveling through Sagittarius, currently in gate 26, the gate of the egoist, is forming a square and a half with Mars in gate 31, the gate of influence over here in the body graph. Now, a square and a half is very similar to a square aspect. It's a frictional, it's hot, it's dynamic, and it offers growth and development. So we have the planet of communication lining up with the god of war and a bit of a conflictual aspect here. And also that Mars is in a square and a half with Jupiter in gate 45. And then that Jupiter is also forming an opposition to that Mercury. So we have Mercury in gate 26, Mars in gate 31, and Jupiter in gate 45. So we have some really strong frictional dynamic heat energy of tribe here, of the support that we can either offer or not. Just a lot of dynamics within our tribal communities right now, having to do with Mercury. Right? Mercury in this optimistic sign of Sagittarius. Now, Mercury's actually in his fall in Sagittarius, but he's opposed to Jupiter in Gemini, and it's called a mutual reception. Mercury's is in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter's in Mercury's sign. So the idea is that they can find some sort of common ground to work through this polar opposition that there is, but it is a bit frictional. And so again, here's an opportunity on Monday where we want to just be mindful of our conversations. Again, this post-election atmosphere is still quite volatile, and I think that we're going to hear a lot of noise about what this all means going forward. But what I'm really liking from the chart is that Mercury at the apex of that frictional dynamic is forming a trine to Chiron, still in retrograde in Aries, and Chiron has moved back into gate 51, the gate of shock. Now, Chiron doesn't get an activation in the human design system, but it's still supportive to look at where he is and what that story may tell. And he's in the gate of shock in the initiation. And I think if nothing else, that really speaks a lot to the time frame that we're in. This is a global, difficult, transitional period in the world, but yet it is an invitation at a personal level. what can I do with my frequency in the world that I live in, and what is the truth that I can contribute? And of course, when I'm using that word contribution, I'm thinking of Uranus in gate 8. Now, I didn't mention it just a second ago, but I wanted to, is that when we had our full moon on November 15th, that full moon was in gate 23, the gate of assimilation in an individual gate, and it was very closely conjunct to Uranus. And then after the full moon on Friday, the sun moved into the exact opposition over this past weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So we've had a very electric Uranian frequency going on. You may have seen this in your own life. Something new or different or unusual may have appeared, but we're in a very electric time. And I think part of, again, is that full moon was indicating that it's a time of assimilating our own unique personal authenticity and expression. And adding to that same flavor of story is this Chiron I'm mentioning in gate 51. So I think as frictional as the energy out there may be, it's an opportunity to not get caught up in that, to have a close connection to our modalities this week. Whatever brings you into your grounded, centered self-embodiment, walks in nature, yoga, qigong, whatever puts you in your inner world, wow, this is really where I see the support right now. I think it's very fertile soil for personal growth and development in spite of what's going on in the external world. Or really, as a result of what's going on in our world, a really supportive time to contemplate and be in our inner world. And the last aspect I'll mention on Monday is that the sun in that gate 14 is forming beginning to form this trine with Neptune, and that'll be in play over the next couple of days. Neptune, still in retrograde, has moved back into gate 36, the gate of crisis. But what I like about the trine the sun is forming here is that it has this opportunity to move into our imagination, into our Neptunian, limitless creative side. And because I say that because it's a trine. Now, sometimes with a square, we may move into the other end of that spectrum, which is delusional, false, you can't see clearly. I mean, anytime Neptune's involved, we are talking about the veil. But I think this sun trining Neptune and the individual frequency that I've been talking about, there's an opportunity here to connect with our inner world and spend some time with our creative imagination, right? It's really supportive right now for these dreams and thinking Mercury and Sagittarius, this optimism of what is my new story? As a result of the challenges I've been through or maybe going through, as a result of possible anxiety or overwhelm and fear about the future, to channel that energy inward for self-discovery right now and what could be our new story as we overcome limiting doubts and fears. Now, I mentioned doubt, and that makes me think of Saturn, because Saturn's been in retrograde in gate 63 in Pisces, and Saturn did turn forward at the time of the full moon on the 15th. So Saturn backed into gate 63, stopped, and now moving forward. This is now the time that Saturn could be offering the forward momentum of restructuring our personal relationship with gate 63, the gate of doubt. It's time for, or it's a possible time for our logic, what we consider our personal logic, to transform, to, in a Saturnian way, through effort and dedication and maturity, to reframe our doubts. How have these doubts possibly been holding us back? As we were talking about with this Pluto in gate 60, line 4, what is the particular personal limitation that this invitation has offered me to accept, reflect, alchemize, heal, transform, and now offer it as a gift to my community, to my greater tribe of my personal inspiration? So a lot going on there on Monday. Let's go ahead and move into Tuesday. Now, big news on Tuesday is that if we take a look at the astrological wheel, we can see that at noon Mountain Time on Tuesday, Pluto is at 29 degrees and 59 minutes. 2 hours later at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, Pluto will finally move into Aquarius for good. He'll be there for the next 20 years. But this is, again, a large part of the overall story right now. Pluto will have wrapped up its work in Capricorn, although we're certainly not We still haven't seen all that will mean, because it is such a large global transition dealing with the Lord of the underworld here. But we are going to experience a new flavor. We are moving into an Aquarian time, moving into this a time of possible social justice, social truths, individual freedom and expression. It may not look like it yet, but I mean, that is the messaging from the charts here as we see Pluto make this transition. And that exact time of moving from Capricorn to Aquarius, it happens in gate 60. Again, I mentioned line 4. That's called the line of resourcefulness. And the idea being is that we have the resources, we have allies that can support us in alchemizing our own personal limitation. So we'll just have to wait and see what this means on a global scale, but I do expect we're going to continue to see massive changes, particularly in the world of technology. We've already been hearing about AI, and is it a good guy or a bad guy? We don't know how that's going to evolve yet right now. But again, I think all of this is pointing in the same direction. It's saying, what does it mean to each of us personally? We are here for a reason, and we are in the right place at the right time to discover our personal hidden truth and power, and how we would want to express that in an inspirational way of contribution to the larger group community. So that's the big news there. Also, we can see that Sun forms its exact trine with Neptune. Again, I think this is bringing that gate 14 in this possibility of limitless creative Neptunian mysticism, spirituality, whatever that means to each person personally. There's real support here on Tuesday to tap into that. Now, the moon traveling through her home sign of Cancer, where she has full access to all of her emotional qualities regarding inner home, inner personal emotional security, is forming a dynamic square with that Chiron in gate 51. So again, could be a little bit triggering here on Tuesday with this challenge of using personal authority and whether or not we are going to accept this invitation to be initiated into the highest version of ourselves. But it's definitely part of the palette. We can still see that Mercury trining that Chiron that I mentioned yesterday on Monday, still very strong, has just passed that exact trine. So there's just real emphasis here on what is this initiation, or how do we reframe the outer draw of the calamities that are happening in this frictional world right now. How do we alchemize that into a sense of support that is driving us each deeper into our voice of authenticity and the empowering feeling? I mean, that's the thing about overcoming whatever this gate 60 personal limitation may be for each of us. It offers the opportunity of the sun in that gate 14 to move in its personal, self-empowered direction. And that is the essence of gate 14. So always following personal authority, but having the life force energy here, we're getting an opportunity. It's an invitation to step into more of who our truth, or what we feel our truth is for each of us. And even though there's a bit of friction in some of these aspects, I think that's the heat that is necessary to light our inner fire so that we can, according to our authority, step into that self-empowered direction. Okay, let's go ahead and move into Wednesday. Okay, and as we get to Wednesday, what we see happening here is that as the moon has left the sign of Cancer and moved into Leo, and again, this chart is run for noontime on Wednesday, the moon is lining up in a conjunction with Mars in gate 31. Now, this is some pretty powerful emotional energy. I mean, the fiery red planet, god of war, the energy to get what we want, lined up with the moon, shining out in that Leo way. Things can get a little bombastic here. Moon-Mars conjunction, again, we might really see this in the collective out there. This is a pretty emotional situation. It's still in a light opposition to that Pluto, as Pluto's making that transition into Aquarius. So again, I just think it's an opportunity to collect anything that right now that is feeling triggering in that sense, or overly stimulating, or really just, gets us a bit dysregulated, I think that's the crux of the message I'm wanting to share as a source of encouragement. Any of that amplification is sort of like the little red warning light on our dashboard of our car going, let's slow down here. Let's take some deep breaths. Is this external situation really meant for me to get involved in or not? It may be. Again, I don't give predictive what we should do here. I'm encouraging following personal authority. But because of such a stimulating lunar cycle, as we're heading in towards the final phase of it, this is a time to be inward and really reflect on, what does this mean for me personally, and not get jerked out of our center of gravity of our personal authority, which it has a little bit of energy to do that. But we certainly have the power, as I'm sharing here, to change the dynamic of that, to use outer stimulation for internal alchemization. And I think the way this Chiron keeps showing up in these supportive aspects, because that sextile to Jupiter that I talked a lot about last week, it's separating a little bit, but it's still there. It's still there. This ability, this gate 45, how we can come together, we can support our loved ones, we can ask for support back for them as well, as we are all moving through this chironic journey of initiation in the gate of shock. So that's Wednesday. Let's go ahead and take it into Thursday. And we get to Thursday, the sun will be in line 6. So this will be the last day with the sun in gate 14 and the earth in gate 18. The moon, for a short period, for 4 or 5 hours, will be passing through gate 7. And because Mars is still in that gate 31, we are going to get the channel of the alpha for the middle part of the day, a design of leadership for good or bad. We can see that leadership is a big topic in the U.S. right now. Where is it taking us? What are the promises being made? Wouldn't life be better if? And so there's just, again, a lot of noise in that regard right now. But again, all signs to me are pointing towards what does that mean for my own self-direction. And also, as of Thursday, the sun, as it's in the final degree of Scorpio, about to move into Sagittarius, is forming a sextile with that Pluto. So again, that gate 14 power skills of personal self-empowered direction is in a supportive communication with this Pluto transformative energy in the gate of limitation. So again, here's a very supportive aspect, how we're going to move forward, right? What have I learned this particular lunar cycle that has dysregulated me, made me anxious or fearful in any way? How can I use that to transform that fear, doubt, and insecurity and move past this limitation into my personal sovereign voice of truth? And that's part of the message we're getting here with Pluto in its first couple days in Aquarius, is this Aquarian voice, social individual sovereignty that I have for myself, but I also honor everyone else's too. And so this is part of the thematic. And I think that Sun sextile Pluto, very supportive on Thursday in particular. Also, I didn't mention Venus yet. For the last few days, she's been traveling through Capricorn and currently in gate 38, the gate of the fighter, another individual gate. Venus is the planet of our personal value, very personal planet, our personal values, desires, the harmony that we want. Venus really represents what we want. Mars is how we get it, but Venus is what we like. And here she's in the gate of the fighter, in the channel of struggle, which is the archetype of finding life with purpose. And to me, again, I keep coming back to it, but that's what I'm seeing in the charts. These are opportunities right now. It's easy to get off balanced and to get caught up in the fear and scare mongering out there. But really, it's very supportive to say, I will stand up in my truth. And here Venus is bringing out to that gate 58, saying, I will fight for my meaning in life, whatever really is the essential truth of who I am. There's energy to take a step in that direction, always honoring our personal authority. So let's go to take it here to Friday. And again, on Friday, we're going to have the third quarter moon. This is the only chart this week that is not for noon Mountain Time. This chart is for 6:27 p.m. Mountain Time. The sun would have moved into gate 34, line 1 at the end of the day on Thursday evening. And so by the next evening, the sun is already into line 2 of gate 34 here in the sacral center. And this is one of the 3 channels in the body graph that is formed by 2 gates that are in opposition, the 34-20. So this puts the Earth here in gate 20. So we have the channel of charisma, a design where thoughts must become deeds. It's nicknamed the channel of being busy. It's the most powerful archetype, gate 34. The sun is in Sagittarius, right? So we have this optimistic Sagittarian life force energy to stand up with conviction and express our gate 20, the existential truth in the now, to stand up in a charismatic way. That's why I started with this week in my report here, is that 2 more individual gates, right? So a lot of power here to do all these things I've been encouraging. What does it mean for me to stand up with my power and my conviction and self-recognize my inner worth, my inner truth, and how would I express that right now? So that's going to be the Sun-Earth theme for the rest of this report through Sunday. But very dynamic, very powerful. And let's see, Venus still moving through that gate 38. Mars still in that gate 31, and Mars is making a sextile to the south node and a trine to the north node in the same, they're all in 4 degrees there. So I think this influence is it's not about getting caught up in other people's influence, but what does it mean for how I feel influential? What is the contemplation of all this noise and chaos going on? What is that stimulating for me and my direction? But real energy, Mars is pressuring the nodal axis for all of us right now to move forward into our own sense of our own opinions. Our own logic is being restructured in gate 63 right now. Saturn is offering the support of restructuring gate 63 for all of us. How will it be as Saturn continues to move through that gate 63 and eventually leaves gate 63? But there's a Saturnian transformation possible there. And it has to do with this logic and how we've gone through this Plutonic lunar Scorpio cycle, how we're going to come out the end of it in another week. But what can we do right now to cultivate our inner strength, our inner authenticity and truth? And that's the direction here. This is the new logical opinion that we can have about ourselves based on this particular experience we've gone through. And the moon herself, and again, this is the exact moment of the 3rd quarter moon, is in a square to the sun, as it is the 3rd quarter. A very dynamic time, not always the best phase of the lunar cycle to start new projects or something of that nature, but there is dynamic square energy to cultivate what we've learned, to put things in order. And having the moon in Virgo, this is associated with the 6th house, which is the house of self-mastery. It's about health and habits and how the patterns that we take care of ourselves. And so I think that's the big message for the 3rd quarter moon, this emotional plutonic transformational cycle that we're in as we're coming to the end of it here, is what are the habits, and whatever they are, maybe watching less news if that's overstimulating, and anything that's dysregulating right now, talking to a particular friend or neighbor that just throws us out of whack, to recognize, hey, I have the power here. I could set my boundaries. I want to put some rocks around my garden, keep the vermin out, right? I want to give it enough water. This is a really supportive time to integrate this powerfully emotional lunar cycle as we head towards the next new moon, which will be in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, and the optimism and possibilities. That'll be taking place on November 30th. But very, very supportive energy for this inner world work as we're tending the 3rd quarter cultivation and integration of the new habits, self-nurturing patterns that we can form in pursuit of our personal tranquility and authenticity. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward again. We'll go into Saturday. And of course, the sun, because that last chart was in Friday evening and now we're at noon the next day, the sun is still showing line 2. He'll be moving out of line 2 not long after this particular chart is run here. But I do want to mention that he is in Sagittarius. And so we have both Sun and Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury still in that gate 26. So we may sense, even with this powerful emotional lunar cycle, there's still somewhere else to go. I mean, all I can say about the overall nature of time, based on how I'm looking at the astrological transits here, there's still a lot of this story to be told. In fact, Mercury's going to reveal a lot more in the coming weeks because Mercury already passed through its opposition to Jupiter, the first opposition, but Mercury's going to turn retrograde next week, and I'll be talking more about that, but he'll pass the opposition to Jupiter a second time and then finally station and move forward and have that third opposition. And so there's a lot more that is going to be communicated about the particular circumstances we're in. But again, I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, talking all the way through the whole Mercury retrograde phase, which will take us all the way towards the end of December. But there is a sense of somewhat of trepidation of optimism here. That, you know, it's challenging, it's confrontational, we're not sure what it all means. What I'm sharing is that let's just be patient right now, hold on to the tranquility we can find with our self-embodiment practices to be centered and listen to our bodies right now. It's been a tumultuous month. If there's anything coming up health-wise, the body is speaking to us, maybe old ailments from the past. See, right now, things could be effervescing in our body that we have put away or ignored and shoved down under the carpet. They may want to be expressing themselves right now, and give ourselves the space for that, to give ourselves the nourishing that now is a wonderful time to take deep breaths, let these things come into our vision and our sense of awareness so that we can actually be aware of it and address it and do something about it. And really good energy, now that we're moving into the last week of this lunar cycle, to take agency regarding the health and patterns of how we support ourselves. And we'll move it to the last day here on Sunday. And here's Sunday. So by Sunday, the sun will have moved into gate 34, line 4, the earth in gate 20, line 4. So again, we're getting this channel of charisma day after day here. A lot of energy. I still think it's going to be pretty noisy out there in the collective world, but reframing our perspective and turning the energy inward, real support for dynamic growth right here. And on Sunday, the moon's still traveling through Virgo. She's going to form a square to that Mercury in that gate 26. And so again, there's just energy to communicate here. How are we speaking right now? I think this is another really great indicator to listen to how we're communicating. Listen to our words. If they don't match up with the internal transformation of truth we've been going through, let's change the new story. This is a time to write new stories. This is a time to put away old fear, doubts, and insecurities that have resurfaced during this lunar cycle. And there's real support, I think, in regards to that. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I just want to thank you all so much for listening. If you got some value out of this, I always appreciate a like, a subscribe, or a comment. If there's more to this story you'd like to hear from me, please give me a comment. Be glad to address it. And thank you so much. I do hope you have a wonderful week. Bye for now. I just want to thank you all so much for listening. If you got some value out of this, I always appreciate a like, a subscribe, or a comment. If there's more to this story you'd like to hear from me, please give me a comment. Be glad to address it. And thank you so much. I do hope you have a wonderful week. Bye for now. I just want to thank you all so much for listening. If you got some value out of this, I always appreciate a like, a subscribe, or a comment. If there's more to this story you'd like to hear from me, please give me a comment. Be glad to address it. And thank you so much. I do hope you have a wonderful week. Bye for now. I just want to thank you all so much for listening. If you got some